Hey, I'm Jack Smith. This is Destini, Ramsey, and Kevon Owen. We are all counselors. And today,
could have confused you. I don't know.
Today we are talking to parents about certain things, and on this video, I wanted to talk about friends. Why is it important to know your children's friends and your children's friends' parents?
This is a big one because the culture that you have in your house and the rules that you have with your kids are not the same for other people's kids or in other people's houses. So if these kids go and they spend the night, you need to know what they're going to be exposed to. And that doesn't mean that you don't let them hang out with that person, although it could get that far, but so that you know how to handle it and so that you know how to address whatever may have come up, and making sure that there is clear communication between you and that parent for trouble that could arise or whatever the case may be.
There are some studies that suggest that minors sometimes find themselves doing things for acceptance amongst their peers. Sometimes those things are bad things. Those studies would call it peer pressure. And if you know the kids that your kids are hanging out with, you know what they're likely to be introduced to, and your kids' friends are probably one of the biggest influences in their life. Depending on how old they are, they're either number one or number two. Congratulations, that makes you either number two or number one, depending on how old they are. So they're littler, their parents are number one, but that's going to change, and then you're going to become number two. Their friend's going to become the loudest voice. So do you know the voice that's speaking to your kid the most or second most influentially? You should.
And then I would say the voice that's speaking to your kid's friend, the parent. It's important. I mean, if you don't know the parents of your kids' friends that they're hanging out with all the time, then you don't know how they're being influenced. You don't know who those people are, and especially if they're going over to that house. Now, we did a video earlier talking about factions that kids create with parents, and one of the things we brought up was just stuff like movies and how old do I want my kid to be before he starts watching like rated R movies or something. And if your kid's 12 and you don't let him watch rated R movies, he might go to somebody's house and then get exposed to a movie that you didn't want him to see. And that could have been easily avoided by just knowing what values and ethics and that these other parents in this household might have had. I think it's important to do the work and do the research on that.
When there's communication between the friend's parents and you as your child's parents, they're less likely to try to get away with things at the other person's house, because they know, oh, I'm going to call over and I'm either going to ask if that's okay or I'm going to tell them, and by the time you get home, they're going to know whatever happened. So they're much less likely to try to go and get in trouble because they have like
accountability.
They have a lot of eyes on them and they have a lot of accountability there.
Okay, so this video so far implies that you have to not only know your kids and spend time hearing what they value and what's going on, but you also have to know their friends. And then you also have to know their friends' parents. It's the worst. You have to talk to all these people and know kind of who they are. Yeah, you do. You've been given influence. You've been given a little person to help shape them into who they're going to be, and you can't do it with half the information. In fact, you might be the influence that changes one of your kids' friends' lives because they meet you and they see that there's something different about you in your household. And I had friends that I was allowed to hang out with just because, well, you can go with that kid anywhere you want. That kid's a good kid. And that happened because my parents knew them. And so take the time, even if it is inconvenient, to know them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Christians, remember, as parents, we are stewards of God's children. They're God's before they're ours. He created them before we had them. And so we are stewards of these children's lives, and we have to answer to God for how we raised them, not for what choices they made on their own. That's them, but what influence we had, what standards we set for them, how did we discipline them and teach them, and how do we raise them? That's what we're responsible for. And so I would say do the research with your kids and their friends parents, and just make sure that wherever they go that they're safe and that they're being influenced in a positive way.
If you need some counseling or want to talk about more topics, well, we all do counseling, and we also work with other people who do counseling. We'd love to work with you.
you.